Hey, good day, everybody. Welcome back to our Zoom Daily with Rabbi Shlomo Schwartz to a realistic map of meaning. He's been going over some beautiful connections on the Noahide laws and the Jewish mitzvot. Very, very useful material. We went through all the do not rob mitzvos, relevant mitzvot, and now he's gone to the do not murder, and lots to discuss, and eye-opening material on how we can how it applies to all of us. So let's just jump right in and say hello to the rabbi. Shalom, Rabbi Schwartz. So good to be with you again. And Rosh Hashanah's coming, so we're going to turn this over to you and let you take it from here.
That's right. Thank you very much. And after tonight, the next time we meet will be the new year. So I'm going to share the screen, and I have a very interesting program tonight. I think because of Dan's question, because of Dan's circumstance. So we to reiterate. Well, let's start with Dan's question. Dan asked about hitting, because he's been working as a security guard, if I understand, for a private resort, or a resort, and he has to deal with people get out of get a little high or drunk and a little ornery, and he has to make sure they don't create a disturbance, whatever. So he has to get physical with them. Is he allowed to or not allowed to do that? Under what, and what's the source for that? So that made me think, and I had to go to the. We have around the corner from you. Have well, not a yeshiva kol, it's called, but like where senior members sit. There's it's really a think tank. It's like a think tank there. Just some very, very wise people are studying the text all day and acquiring a lot of wisdom. So I spoke to one of them, Rabbi Reich. And he was a little stumped too, come out of left field, but so worked it out. So, but let's go over this first. I want to reiterate that everybody agrees, everybody knows, any Noahide community or Jewish source to tell you there's 7 Noahide mitzvahs, and they'll list them off, and they're all the same. There's no argument about which ones they are. The question is that all there are, just 7? Because the Jews have 613. Although the 613, again, most of them are not applicable. Well, at least half of them, approximately, are not applicable today because we don't have the temple. So a lot of them have to do with temple. We can't do them. But the other ones are, and there's much more than 7. But Rambam himself, who is the main source of information about the Noahide rules, listed in under the one of do not steal, he listed a whole bunch that do not steal, do not rob, do not deny payment, do not pay late, don't lie in court, a whole bunch of them as part of that thing, which sets to me sets a precedent that, in other words, you have to look at these as to what's the theme behind it. And I've suggested that do not rob is not to take away property rights. You have to have property rights for society to run. And this one about do not murder is not to destroy human creativity. And the reason I use that sort of strange phrase is because in my book I set out a whole explanation of how God created the world and what that creation consists of, and how we add to creation with our selves, with our emotions, and with our rules. And because they're not physical, the rules aren't physical. So, for example, the rule to abide by property rights, that's your land, not my land. It's just land. There's nothing physically manifest about who the owner is. It's just land. So we make up these rules that's your land, is my land, and so on. So that's imposed. That's another level of reality imposed on the physical reality. The ownership reality is not physical. It's just it's a rule we made up. And same thing with emotions. It's something we made up. So we add to God's creation in that way. So The idea be, I mean, you murder someone, you take away a source of creation, which is what God likes. He likes more and more creation, and He's given it to us to multiply it. So that takes care of murder and prevent murder anyway, and exile of accidental murder, which was how to deal with that. And I wouldn't have necessarily said that that's critical, because it's not. We only have the rule: do not murder, and so do not murder critically includes preventing murder. That goes along with it. But if a murder happened by accident, okay, unfortunate, but not immediately obvious or intuitively obvious that you have to go into exile because of it. But the divine code brought it down as a command to non-Jews as well to go into exile if they were uh, party to an accidental murder, somebody dying by accident. So I just followed their lead. Now we got to do not hit, and do not hit is not murder. It's physical. So it's not property rights. You would think it's physical, and so I say that when you take life illegally, you're just removing the source of creativity. God created that person so that they would add to creation. You're defying that. When you hit someone, the guy's still there, so you might say that it's okay, or I mean, it's not okay. People don't want each other hitting, but who says that it's biblically ordained? It could be just society. Well, that's the first answer he gave, because there's a difference of opinion between Rambam, Maimonides, and Ramban, which is Nachmanides, about the seventh, if you like, the seventh one about establishing courts of justice to run society. That's one of the mitzvahs. Does that include making up your own laws or not? Normally, you would understand that that it includes making up your own laws, because you have to have traffic laws, inheritance laws, property laws. There's all kinds of things happening that we have to make a decision how we're going to govern ourselves, and then those courts would administer that, and that would just keep everybody safe and sound and in compliance and courteous to each other. So so by virtue of that, part of that is not to hit each other. So they make up the laws and they establish that. So that would fall under a different chart according to that. But I'm trying to follow Rambam. And he says, no, the mitzvah to establish courts is to administer the seven mitzvahs, the ones that the Torah gave, not ones you make up. So that means if we want to apply it the same way that Ramban does, that means we have to bring in under the umbrella of these seven mitzvahs the rules that we make up. And so that's what I'm getting at here. So when you hit someone, nobody likes to be violated. It hurts, and it's it makes you think twice. So you're violently diminishing human creativity. In the first case of taking life illegally, you're erasing the potential, the human creativity. But here, you're diminishing it, and you're doing so violently. So you're violent, like in the sense that you're taking life. So you're involved in the same activity as murder. You're using violence, but now you didn't take away the human creativity, but you diminish it, and so that is a subset of taking it away. In a sense, you've taken away some of it. So that's how it would follow that you're not allowed to hit. Now, having said that, I want to point out. Okay, so self-defense is the rodif, that we prevent murder in any way, is sort of the headliner for that, because if you see somebody never mind yourself. Even if you see somebody try to murder somebody else, you have a duty to prevent that. If you and if necessary, murder the guy that's trying to murder someone else. But if you can do it with less violence, then do it that way. Certainly, sometimes you could stop the guy just by saying, "I see what you're doing, and I'm going to go report you." So they don't want to be they don't want to be public. They don't want to be prosecuted. So that might be enough to stop them. Um, there's and that's not a joke, because you see a lot of times when somebody stands up to a guy just trying to rob a convenience store or something like that, they'll vacate because they want to put it up, but they thought just make it easy. So to protect yourself, that would seem to be a no-brainer, as they say. Um, oh, right. So now, so let's go first step. If I own property, can I protect my property? Can I use violence to protect my property? So, so he brought in a very unusual case. I mean, he didn't. First, I have to say that he didn't want to contemplate. He's a very strict. The guy I was talking to is a very strict interpreter, and I haven't had a chance to, just there for a minute or two, so I didn't have a chance to fully engage on how widespread the no-head laws do. These guys are great scholars, but they tend to concentrate on matters that apply to Jewish people, and they don't get asked a lot about non-Jewish, so they haven't gone into that dimension of it. But he did point out that there is a case in the Torah where, and it's a very graphic description of using violence against violence, and that is the description of the Torah is that if two men are quarreling, physically quarreling, and the wife of one comes to the aid of her husband by basically, which I say, she damages his genital area, and actually it gives him a permanent injury in that case. So if in that situation, what the Torah says, the word of the Torah is, you cut off her hand. Now we never mean cut off her hand. It means she'll have to pay for that. She'll have to, she didn't have a right to do that. It was excessive force, but that's only for excessive force. If it was necessary force, then she wouldn't have to pay. She's allowed to protect herself or her husband, and not pay the result. Now, what would be the result if she is guilty? She has to pay money, which makes it a monetary issue. There's a whole line of thought here. So in other words, if you injure somebody, and this is the fact. If you injure somebody, this is well established. If you injure anybody, you don't have permission to do so. So you have to pay the damages. There's a loss of value to the person. If they were sick and they weren't able to work, then there's loss of work. There's pain. You have to pay for the pain. There's embarrassment. You have to pay for the embarrassment. If there's doctor's bills, you have to pay for that. There's 5 things you might have to pay for when you damage somebody, which makes it a monetary issue. So when you hit somebody, it's considered you're robbing them of some value, and that would put this mitzvah into the other category of do not rob, if we want to go like that. But I'm going to leave it here on this chart because first of all, we have enough on that chart, and secondly, because of the violence involved. So I'm going to, but like between the two, it's certainly covered, and you certainly have the ability to defend your property. There's that just understandable allowance that you have a right to defend your property against someone else. you as a security guard are acting as an agent of the owner. So, certainly the police, there you have government has ordered has hired these people to administer the law on a policeman way, and they have the right to do what they need to in order, because the government is everybody agrees, the people agree that we should have a government, and they have to have a police department, and notwithstanding in the States they defund the police movement, but the right thinking person understands you have to have people in charge of this. But so that's going to be the basis for the rule. There's a very interesting, because we have this rule of do not hit. So you have to really think it through and find where's the allowance for letting others hit, and it must be to defend yourself or your property. That if they're at risk, the only way to save it is by countering, even using violence. Then it must be so. So, would you call this critical or optional? You call this critical. Ronald, do you agree?
Oh, yes, I'm not muted. I thought I was muted. Yes, I would agree that it's critical.
Robbie?
Yes, I agree.
Okay, and now Grace? Oh, you can't talk. Okay, you're having trouble with that thing. So I'll put down critical. Okay. So now the next one is do not hit your parents. Now I put that here because obviously it's like closely related to do not hit. So there's a special mitzvah and not hit your parents, but is that just, of course not your parents. Don't hit, especially not your parents. But I think there's something deeper there, and I've called it don't violently, because you're still using violence and you're still diminishing something human, but not the creativity, but here the authority. The authority is part of our creativity, is that we need to, we have hierarchies of who gets the first say, who gets to decide, and so on. And so that's part of the whole fabric of creating, is you need to have a hierarchy of authority. And if you're going to hit your parents, that's the first line of authority, the natural line of authority from the time you're a child. That's just built into the system, is that is the authority figure. And if you're going to be violent against your parents, now that you're grown up and able to do so, because you might have tried earlier, but get smashed down. But now, unfortunately, if such dysfunction in the relationship that you're punishing them or being violent, so that is a crime, but it's a crime against all humanity, because it undermines the very idea of a parental seniority, a parental hierarchy. And so really it diminishes for everybody, not just the person you violated, but for everybody. It diminishes the whole concept. They see it's like such a bad example for everybody. So would you call it critical or optional? Okay. Anybody disagreeing?
No.
Okay. So we'll go, and the word writes itself. Okay, now we come to do not kidnap. Now, do not kidnap is interesting because it's the words that tell us not to kidnap are the same words that tell us not to steal. But it's just the context. The actual verse at Exodus 20, that's the 10 Commandments. And when it said don't murder, as the first one, 2013 here, and then in the same verse it says do not kidnap, is because the rabbi said it's not talking about stealing, because stealing normal stealing you could repay and be done with it, and therefore you're not going to suffer a death penalty like you do with murder. You can't get away from murder. You can't give the guy his life back, but you give the money back. So since it's in that context, it must be talking about something you cannot give back, and that is kidnapping, which is a capital crime. If you kidnap somebody, now in the Jewish mitzvah, there's a number of interesting legal wrinkles that are necessary. You have to, in order to be, it's a capital crime, but in order for the capital crime to exist, you have to have, denied freedom, but also either sold him or made him work, and treated him in a certain way. So there's a number of issues there. Actually, I should have refreshed my memory. But it's not just kidnapping. Like, let's say you ask for a ransom. It's not just that. It's a little more. But the idea is that you're, as I say in the E column, don't physically diminish human creativity, because what I've changed is not from hitting your parents. You're diminishing instead of erasing, but you're not violent necessarily, but you're physically diminishing human creativity. So it's really the same as hitting, but there you're violently diminishing the creativity. Here, the extra level is you may not have hit the guy, you just like grabbed him and incapacitated him, locked him in a room. He can't go anywhere. You restricted his freedom. That's kidnapping. You haven't hit him. You haven't hurt him necessarily. Although maybe it may have happened in the course of the kidnapping, but that's not the point. The point of the kidnapping is you're restricting his freedom. So
Rabbi, can I ask a question to that point?
What
about, say, a divorcing couple, and one doesn't want to return the child, and you're dealing with, parental right question. Would that fall under kidnapping?
That's a really good question too. You come up with good ones, because here's how I would analyze that question. If it's an adult, so anytime you're kidnapping an adult, so then it's not a subject to the divorce. I mean, the kid's an adult, and he can decide where he wants to go and so on. So if you insist or control them, it's a regular case of kidnapping. But you're thinking of a child. So the child, can you kidnap a child? Because the child, you can't let a child go wherever they want. You have to restrict their freedom. Every parent has to restrict the freedom of their children. So is it even possible to kidnap a child in that sense? If they're not ready to be creative. They're growing into it. So, is it a case of kidnapping if someone kidnaps someone less than adult? Because they anyways have to be restricted freedom. Let's say you're a guardian, or what you're leading to is you're one of the parents, and you want the kid to be by you, and maybe the other parent wanted at least partial rights, or the court may have decided that the child should be with the other parent, and you don't agree, so you capture the kid, you take the kid somewhere else. Is that kidnapping? It's your kid. You're responsible for the kid. The court may decide one way. You have to actually follow that. That's also part of it, which would then bring into the consideration your responsibility vis-a-vis the other mitzvah of established courts. If you establish courts, you got to follow what the courts say. So let's say there was a court ruling that the kid goes with the mother. You're a father, and you don't think that's good, or maybe it happens the other ways that. Well, no, mostly the father will kidnap the child. They feel wronged, and would that be kidnapping? So that's a very good question. Whether it's possible to kidnap a child, and whether it's possible to kidnap your own child.
Yeah, I say
I,
that
I,
because we recently had a case here in British Columbia where a mother was given custody of the kids for 2 weeks for a summer vacation, and she didn't
uh,
return them, and then
right,
they put a be on the lookout for
right,
what do they call it, an
right,
Amber Alert, and
right.
yeah, it made national news, and so it was right in my area, and the point being, they eventually about 4 weeks later, they find the kids recovered them safely and brought them home to their father, which had the court order of custody. And yeah,
And it's even more interesting in that, as far as Torah is concerned, this is a capital crime. Kidnapping is a capital crime. So if you were guilty of this, I know that the Canadian government wouldn't. I mean, they won't kill anybody, but they certainly wouldn't treat it as severely as they do a murderer. But maybe they ought to. Um, yeah. So um, sometimes you can be understanding and wreck society with your understanding because you know if you don't follow the law, if it's well, maybe we won't punish you so bad because we understand you, so then you can do what the heck you like and hope for the best there. So um, it's another very interesting question. There's some considerations here that have to be um, dealt with. Uh, but I'll research it. I'll research it. All I can say right now is that it would seem that if there was a court order, then by virtue of the other mitzvah, you have to comply, and and now you're opening up a real. I don't want to call it a can of worms because it's fascinating. It's not ugly. It's beautiful as to how we deal with this. If someone doesn't obey the court order, is that a capital offense? Or they can start obeying it now. Let's say they've done something that makes it impossible ever avoid a court order, and I can give you an argument why it would be a capital crime because you're unraveling society. It's just so crucial that people work together, and there's going to be arguments, and the court has to decide the arguments. So if you're not going to obey the decision, then you're wrecking it. You're destroying society. You're going to destroy society. That's like going to war. You've gone to war with society. So people die in the war, and it's not a small matter. It's a very critical matter. Yeah. So going back to your case, where you're the agent of the owner that's protecting their property, I would say you're completely within your rights to police the area and make sure that people are behaving according to the rules and not creating a disturbance, not creating property damage, and so on, because you're the agent of the owner, as far as that goes. So now coming into kidnapping with children, and I mean, everybody understands, I'm sure everybody agrees that, if you do kidnap people, especially like, for the purpose of holding them ransom, I guess that's the only reason. I mean, you're doing it for a reason. So what's the yeah, I have to look into this better. It's a very good question. So we're almost out of time, so I'm gonna leave it like that. Any questions or comments on what we've done?
I'm good.
I'm good. Yeah.
Okay.
no, I
Grace
think
is a little-
I'm okay with that, Rabbi.
Okay. Okay. So a happy New Year to all you, and
That's right.
Thank you.
a good verdict. Look for a good verdict. Be aware that you can change whatever it is. Consider everybody has something to improve. It's a good idea to examine yourself and make a decision. God's close, especially during this time, to help you with a good decision, with a good effort. All you have to do is want to do it and treat it seriously. and you'll have extra help. You may not recognize it, but it'll be extra help, and you'll be able to do better, which is what we all aspire to do as long as we're alive. Keep growing.
That's right.
Thank you
Make the
for
world a better
attending.
place in the process, for sure.
Right.
Well, Rabbi, we wish you all the best for Rosh Hashanah. And so, on that note, that means we have no broadcast Sunday, correct?
No broadcast Sunday. That's correct. We'll be back Monday night. That's correct.
Okay. So, folks, that's going to be our class for today. We will be back on Monday after Rosh Hashanah at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific for more Zoom Daily with Rabbi Shlomo Schwartz. Do a realistic map of meaning. And once again, thanks, Ronald, Rabbi, Grace, for joining us in the Zoom meeting. And if you want to attend your Zoom meeting, let us know. Or if you have any questions, you can email Rabbi Schwartz directly at his email is sbs447@gmail.com. That's SB as in Bob, S447@gmail.com. So until next time, have a wonderful Rosh Hashanah, everybody. Bye for now.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Must be supper time for you, Dan, is it?